Hi everyone, it's Jennifer with another lesson on conditionals. If you've been watching my lessons on the different kinds of if clauses we can make, I hope you're feeling more confident now about using conditional sentences in English. Each lesson I challenge you with a couple of tasks. In the previous lesson, I asked you to complete these sentences with your own ideas. I'd really appreciate it if you... Would you mind if... These are conversational expressions you can use to make requests. You can use them with coworkers, classmates, neighbors, and friends. Both are polite because they use unreal conditionals. I'm not telling you the way it's going to be. I'm asking whether it would be all right if I got my way. I'm not demanding anything. Remember, to speak hypothetically or to imagine a situation in the present or future, we use the simple past in the condition, that's the if clause, and then would plus the base verb in the result. Let's take a look at the examples you came up with, and I'll let you know how much variation is acceptable with the verb forms.
Let's start with Aimano sentences. I would really appreciate it if you corrected my sentences and mentioned my name again. ED, I like those choices. The simple past sounds fine here. Would you mind if I invited you for lunch? Grammatically, it's correct, but this expression is best for making requests, not invitations. So it might sound more natural if you said, would you mind if I joined you for lunch? I'm asking, is it okay? Can I join you for lunch? Would you mind if I joined you for lunch? Raed wrote, I'd really appreciate it if you consider my marriage offer. I would rather see either the simple past, if you considered, or some people might use a modal like would. I'd really appreciate it if you would consider my marriage offer. Although we don't normally use would in the condition, it's more so a modal we see in the result. In this expression, it is very common. If you would do something, if you would consider my offer. Okay. 2, would you mind if I come over to your place tonight and have dinner with you? We'll make it a question. Some people choose to use come and have, and that would be the simple present. I would suggest shifting to the past. Would you mind if I came over? You could even shorten it. How about, would you mind if I came over to your place tonight for dinner? Marat shared some examples. He wrote, I'd really appreciate it if you made a lesson, I'd say about ordering fast food sometime in the future. Well, I'll consider that. I like your verb choices. Would you mind if I eat the last brownie? That's a good context. I think it sounds fine for everyday spoken conversation. I might suggest though using ate. I think eat sounds okay, but I'd prefer the past. Would you mind if I ate the last brownie? Yes, I would mind. Lucas shared examples. He wrote, I'd really appreciate it if you and I recorded a music video together to teach English with music. I'd sing and you'd play. What a great suggestion. I'd really appreciate it. You use the simple past, but to suggest a possibility, you could use could. So simple past works, but I would suggest could to emphasize that possibility. I'd really appreciate it if you and I could record a music video together. Okay. And the second example, would you mind if I arrived, you could say, a little later than planned? And then it sounds very natural. That's a good question to ask, either over the phone or by text. Would you mind if I arrived a little later than planned? Molly shared her examples. First, I'd really appreciate it if you opened the window. It sounds okay, but you know what I'd prefer? Either the simple past, opened, or a modal verb. If you would open, then you could use the contraction, and it would sound like this. I'd really appreciate it if you'd open the window. Second, would you mind if I leave early today? Again, sounds okay, but I would prefer the simple past here. Would you mind if I left early today? If you really want to use the simple present, do you know how I'd change it? I would use do at the beginning. It's no longer unreal. Do you mind if I leave early today? So let's go back now, though, to the construction I gave you. Would you mind if I left early today? More examples. I would really appreciate it if you would leave the captions on the screen a bit longer. If that's a real request, I'll consider it. Would you mind if I interjected with my own idea? That's a nice request, right? You want to interrupt, you don't want to be rude about it. That's a good example. And I love the verb forms here. If you would leave and interjected. Okay, so we have would plus a base verb, and then here we have the simple past. If you'd like to see more of my corrections to student examples, then visit me on Facebook.
Thank you to everyone who posted their examples. To summarize, I think these patterns are the ones that are most used and more commonly accepted. I'd appreciate it if you plus simple past. I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell anyone. I talked with a colleague about this pattern and we agreed it was common with verbs in the negative verbs. I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell anyone. Another very common pattern is to use I'd really appreciate it if you plus would or could, and then the base verb. I'd appreciate it if you could help me. I'd appreciate it if you would help me. Would you mind if I plus simple past? Would you mind if I sat here? You might hear people use the simple present. Would you mind if I sit here? Technically, I don't think that's correct, but you'll hear it. And if I heard it, I'd think, yeah, I understand what the person wants, what they're saying. It sounds okay. I'd recommend this simple past. If you really want to use the simple present, I would suggest changing the question to, do you mind? Do you mind if I sit here? So it's a difference between unreal and real. Would you mind if I sat here? Do you mind if I sit here? Now let's consider the question I asked you in the previous lesson. What's the difference between these sentences? If I'm invited to meet Hollywood celebrities, I'll take a lot of selfies. If I were invited to meet Hollywood celebrities, I'd take a lot of selfies. If I'd been invited to meet Hollywood celebrities, I'd have taken a lot of selfies. There were a lot of very good explanations in the comments. Let me share just a few that I think everyone will find useful.
Mahmoud offered his explanations, and some of you might find this helpful because he uses traditional grammar terms. He identifies examples A, B, and C as first, second, and third conditional. So sentence A, if I'm invited to meet Hollywood celebrities, I'll take a lot of selfies. It describes something which might happen in the future. If I were invited to meet Hollywood celebrities, I'd take a lot of selfies. It describes something in the present. I'd ask present or future, which is not true or unlikely to happen. Okay. If I had been invited to meet Hollywood celebrities, I'd have taken a lot of selfies. So it describes a situation that didn't happen. And I'd say the speaker imagines the result of this situation, which is impossible to happen because we're talking about the past and it's already gone, right? The past is over. Gabrielle offers very clear explanations. Sentence A means that the situation is possible or likely to happen at any time in the future. Sentence B means that the situation is imaginary or hypothetical, as it's unlikely to happen. Sentence C means that the situation is impossible, right? It won't happen. I'd say it's impossible because the timing of the action is gone. Okay? And Françoise offers a very concise explanation. Sentence A is the chance I have to meet them is largely open. It's a hope. In sentence B, the chance I have to meet them is more unlikely. It's only a wish, a dream. In sentence C, the chance I have to meet them is definitely over. The possibility is now part of the past.
Let's focus on that last example. If I'd been invited to meet Hollywood celebrities, I'd have taken a lot of selfies. Or with the full forms, if I had been invited to meet Hollywood celebrities, I would have taken a lot of selfies. So what's the pattern for imagining something about the past that's completely counterfactual? In other words, it didn't happen that way. I'm just imagining the past differently. We use if plus the past perfect in the condition, and then would have plus the past participle in the result. My example was kind of tricky because I used a passive verb, had been invited. So had been plus the past participle is a passive verb in the past perfect. Here's an example that's easier to understand. It uses only active verbs, no passives. If I had seen celebrities on my trip, I would have taken photos. Note that we could also use the modal verbs could and might in the result clause. Let's practice together, okay? I'll tell you something that didn't happen, and then you tell me a conditional sentence that we can create based on this situation. Remember, we could use could, might, and would in the result clause. Fact: Joseph didn't renew his driver's license. That's why he couldn't help with the driving on our long road trip. I'd say, if Joseph had renewed his driver's license, he could have helped us with the driving on our long road trip. Fact: The movie didn't have a happy ending. That's why I didn't enjoy it very much. I'd say, if the movie had had a happy ending, I might have enjoyed it more. Fact: Caroline spent her whole paycheck on new furniture. That's why she couldn't go out with us to dinner. I might comment, if Caroline hadn't spent her whole paycheck on new furniture, she could have gone out with us to dinner. We're almost done, so let's talk about homework. Your first task is to report these two statements. Rewrite them so that quotation marks are not needed. You can write your ideas in the comments, but I won't confirm the answers until the next lesson. For your bonus task, I want you to identify the time period in this sentence. If we had moved back to Moscow several years ago, our children would speak better Russian. We'll go over the answer to that bonus task in our next lesson. That's all for now. I'll see you again soon for another lesson on conditionals in English. Please remember to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. As always, thanks for watching and happy studies.
Remember to join me on Twitter for vocabulary practice. I'm there Monday through Friday. And if you follow me on Facebook, you can try different language tasks throughout the week.